Hello, my barbecue friends. It's brisket day here at New England Barbecue. I'm Rick, I'm your host. Let's go check this out. Three tips for you here when it comes to trimming a brisket. The first and most important, have a really good sharp knife. This is a cold steel curved boning knife, works really well. Second tip, make sure the brisket's cold. The colder it is, the harder the fat is. The harder the fat is, the easier it is to trim. And the third I'll show you here when we get into it, but what I'm gonna do, instead of just trying to trim straight across, what I will do is you'll see me stick the knife through some of the fat, cut a small tab outward, use my free hand to peel the tab up, and then I will cut along underneath. You're giving yourself a handle, it just makes the job that much easier. We're gonna take the top of the brisket here down to about 1/4 inch of fat. The bottom, we're gonna trim off all the silver skin, and that's about it. We're not gonna overdo it here. We're gonna do our best to try to keep one hand clean and dry. The other hand's gonna be used to get into the meat here, but just to show you what I was talking about to start, this little trick, we're gonna come in, push the knife through, give ourselves a little bit of a tab that we can then use to peel back as we cut through. Just giving ourselves a little bit of a handle makes our life that much easier. What we're going to go for here is a nice aerodynamic shape. So even though that is meat right there, I'm going to cut it off because that's going to obstruct the airflow coming over the brisket when it's in the smoker. So I don't want that. We're about halfway through the top here. What I want to show you is over here, you got this whole big cut of meat that looks nice and marbly. That's actually no good. We got to cut about 1/4 inch off all the way around here because that is just never going to cook or render correctly. So one of the tricks to brisket is to know when to stop trimming as much as it is to know what to trim. If you trim too much of this fat off, you're not going to have anything to protect the meat during the cook. This fat protects the meat from the heat. It also adds a lot of flavor as it renders and goes into the meat and the juice, etc. So you don't want to trim too much, you don't want to trim too little, but better to err on the side of a little bit of extra fat. That way you protected your meat, you get a good cook, as opposed to trimming too much and then you end up drying out your meat. We got the point up front. This has a lot of fat in it, so I'm not really worried about the bald spots that we have here because there's so much fat in the meat, it's going to be protected throughout the cook in and of its own. The flat on the other side does not have a lot of fat in it, so I'm making sure to leave a good, healthy 1/4 inch fat pad here in the back. I'm going to flip it over and do the other side now. Here we have the underside of the brisket. We're going to trim off all of this fat and silver skin that you see here. This doesn't serve any purpose during the cook. It's the part of the brisket that's facing down. All of this is just going to do is drip down. This here is never going to render anyway, so it's got to come off. You can go as crazy as you want cleaning up all of this silver skin. You can leave it on there. Really, that's up to you. So there we have it. This side is all trimmed up. That's as far as I need to go. The rest of that will cook off. You can see over here that we really got into the decal and got rid of a lot of that fat. That fat's never going to cook off and render. But I don't want to go all the way through because otherwise we'll end up separating the point from the flat, and I like to cook this thing as one big piece. So the last thing I'm going to do here as I'm going through this trim is I'm just going to look for shape. I want to make sure I've got a good aerodynamic shape so that the smoke and heat will just go right over the top of this thing, real smooth, give me a nice even cook. So there you have it, 2 trimmed briskets. This was the 20.5 pounder. This was the 12.5 pounder. Didn't have to do a heck of a lot of trimming on the smaller one. Good thing. Now we're going to put a little bit of rub on them and get them ready to go. Kosher salt. Ground black pepper. Onion and garlic. It's really that simple. Don't want to overcomplicate the rub. You lose the flavor of the meat, and you really don't need to. So one of the tricks to the rub is you don't want to get any rub where heat and smoke aren't going to get to. Plenty of heat will get in there, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to get any direct heat. It's going to come through the meat, and I'm not going to get any smoke in there. If I put rub in there, that's just going to be cake, untouched rub later on. So I'm not going to put rub on the inside, but I'll make sure to get plenty around the outside. Remember that clean hand, dirty hand trick I mentioned earlier? It's just as important here. I want to make sure we got one hand we can get into the rub and onto the meat. Another hand's nice and dry so that we don't contaminate anything. You'll notice I'm not using any kind of a binder here. It's because I'm going to let these set up for a couple hours before we put them on the smoker tonight. But if I was going to be putting these directly on the smoker, I may consider putting either a brown mustard or a Worcestershire sauce type binder on there. The way I'm cooking these, that is not necessary. Make sure you get the sides too. There you go, folks. 2 briskets, trimmed, rubbed, ready to set. See you in a while. $250 on the left, $250 on the right, 2 o'clock in the morning. It's time to get the briskets in the smoke. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. We're running between 225 and 250. Time to put some apple cider vinegar on these briskets. 8 a.m. We're humming along, still at 250. Let's see how we're doing. Here we are. It has been 11 hours since we first lit the smoker at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's been about 10 hours since we put the briskets on. The 12.5 pound brisket came off the smoker at 8.5 hours. The 20.5 pound brisket is now done, and we're going to pull it, let it rest for about an hour and a half. So here they are, 2 briskets resting. The 12.7 pound brisket's gonna stay resting for a little bit because I gotta bring that one over to a friend's house. This one, on the other hand, we're gonna slice open. Hang out with me for a sec. Much to the dog's chagrin, we're not gonna slice the entire brisket right now. I'm gonna cut up a little bit and then put the rest away for dinner. I'm gonna cut against the grain up to the point, at which point we'll turn this thing 90 degrees. We'll cut this way and you'll see how this came out. The smoke ring right there. It's beautiful. Cut about a pencil width slices here. Look at that. It's beautiful. Holds up on its own. And pulls apart effortlessly. And it is so good. Bring you around the side so you can see what I've got going on here. That's where the point the flat meat, and look at that. It came out perfect. So there it is, 2 briskets, overnight cook. First briskets on the new Lone Star Grills 24x36 offset. These were the best briskets I've ever made. Thank you, Lone Star Grills. That was fantastic. Like and share this video if you found it useful. Subscribe so you can catch our future content, and please leave me any comments or feedback you have down below. Thanks for coming to New England Barbecue. We'll see you next time.